as we think about it, let me kind of give you that. So I'm the youngest of 11. And these are all my brothers and sisters. And being the youngest of 11, the only one who went to college, the only one, second one to have graduated. So the issue was, back in my family, they would always ask me questions as if I knew, just because I'd actually graduated high school. And the assumption was he graduated high school, nickname was Cricket. Cricket knows, just go ask Cricket. You got a bump on your toe, go ask Cricket about the bump on your toe. He knows because he's been to school. And so when we begin to talk about whether something is teachable, we also have to wonder whether it's reachable. Can it reach to and help things to be understandable for those folks? So being in that sense, coming from that environment, education was thought of differently. So, you do have the burden. You being a son of a sharecropper, my father couldn't read. So my responsibility of delivering content or delivering information to him that he can understand, that's what education meant to me. It didn't mean that I had access to something that I could share, that I could use, and that I could deliver. And so whatever method I used, he had this thing that he told me. It was right before he thought he was dying. He called me into the room, and he said, when you stand before people, I want you to talk so the president of poor man can understand you and respect you at the same time. And that's what I effort to do in education. So if I have to use Roderick, if I have to use whatever means necessary, having to bridge that gap to have those conversations. And that's one thing that you can do with an assistant, is maybe find ways as to make those connections, help students keep engaged in that process. And I was kind of the chat GPT for my family. Back in the day, if something happens, they make it make sense to me. What are they talking about? That means reading the mail, because if you couldn't read, then I have to read the mail, whether it be insurance, whether it be someone on the phone. And even in that sense, sometimes my mother was talking on the phone and they were talking about some insurance or some bill has to be paid. You have to listen and say, oh, Mama, what they're talking about is this. So I have to find a way to take that information, reframe it, and purpose it back. That's one of the things also that you can find available as an AI assistant. If a student says something, she uses the word walk me through it, so it has to understand that vernacular, so she's using this. And so then you have to have those conversations. But let's talk a little deeper about that process and understand what I mean. Is that when you start to look at education and how we defined it, it used to be that we wanted to give folks information, not just test to see what information they had. We wanted to prepare them for something. And so what was the purpose of education? For them to learn to appreciate, or learn to basically use the word applicate. Can you make a sense out of this? And then after that, things changed and we start to try to refine things like, okay, now we have this there, we have that. So we start to try to find little tinkerings, you have your learning by objectives. But now that we have AI, you kind of have to refine what your purpose in education are. You're not necessarily just the expert on content anymore. I remember, and maybe nerdy, I would go to Vanderbilt sometimes to look in the library and just start opening up books, reading it, just to see what it is that they're talking about over Vanderbilt that makes them that much deeper. So they have access to all the books. So their libraries were nicer than the other folks' library. So you assume that all that information they had was what you would get at a prestigious university. Now you have access to that prestigious university just with an AI bot. You have access to all the research, all the recent conversations. And so as an educator, I gotta make use of that. I gotta give my students every advantage, and I want them to do that. So begin to kind of think about what that means. And so as you think about what it is that we're trying to limit, is now we can't do that because we have to give them the tools of the trade. What started my journey in AI is my son, who's actually back there, and it was a while ago. He showed me this little picture. You see Minnie and Mickey? So he asked AI agent basically to give me a Mickey and Minnie with high top fades and dreads. I think one of us is not. And it came up with that. And I was like, man, that's pretty deep. One, I'd never seen a black Minnie and Mickey. That was a little different for me. And that's not actually what he asked for. He just asked for a high top fade and some braids. And it came up with that. Then you see the jacket and all those things. So they began to be kind of interesting to me. So at that time, I considered him the AI guru, the expert. So he would always know everything. Hey, did you say this? The AI this? I was like, okay, I said AI. Just like when you talk to folks now, they're like, okay. AI, got it, AI. But every commercial, AI, it's ubiquitous now. If you don't know AI, it's like you don't know. If you don't frame how it's used and made an application. And then you begin to think about, typically, what is my purpose in educating? To help folks deal with the challenges of life. A lot of teachers come in, they try to challenge students' thinking. I don't want to challenge your thinking. I want your thinking to be able to help you deal with the challenges that you have to address. Now, if you have to deal with folks with other thoughts and that's a challenge, then we can address it that way. And so, as you noticed up there, meeting a special need, what AI does, that's a picture of my sister. She just actually died a few months ago in December. And she was one that was considered, a person that was considered mentally retarded. That's a term that they used to use back in the day. So understanding things, relating to things was difficult and a challenge for us. So this summer, her and her partner there, and he's a guy, this younger guy, he had also had some challenges, but he was pretty much the hospice support team. He was the one that was there with the bathing, the feeding, and all that. Because when you're on the hospice, pretty much what happens is they only pay for so many hours, and after that, you have to figure it out yourself. You have to do the medication. And so how do you deal with the medication? So it was the summer, right? I was coming to visit back and forth through sick. Guess who came? Me and my little AI agent. The questions that he asked, I said, what are the problems you have? Well, he's trying to wonder about the dosing and things like that. I said, well, giving her this, when should I give her this? So we started having a conversation. And so here he's learning, he said, no, they're not spending, oh, okay. So we actually knew what to ask the doctor, knew what to ask the nurses. And then we began to talk about issues like the half-life of medicines. And then you end up talking to the nurses, and you see the kind of example of a nurse. I began to talk with them about AI. And even though they had been through nursing, they had been in hospice for years, they actually didn't know the terms that they were using, or that there were other terms to talk about half-life of medicines. So I use AI as a conversation to bridge that gap, to educate those nurses. So that's the application for nursing. That's the application for someone's trying to care. So then beginning to understand half-life, and also the concept of double effect. And that concept suggests that sometimes when you deal with someone that's dying, you have to deal with the fact that this medicine that you're given is to try to help alleviate pain and have a quality of life, but it also kind of hastens death, and not knowing where that balance is. Am I helping and am I hurting? And so that concept was rich to them. And so in the middle of a room, a hospice room, I call it, it's a bedroom in your house where you know that you got to stay there because you can't move. Nurses were learning, and then they said, okay, well, let me call the doctor about this. Let me ask them, should we be taking this? Oh, we shouldn't have been taking that. We should have taken this. You know where they got the information from? A little education with a little assistant. So whatever things that you know, you can add to that content. And in the classroom, you don't know all the answers sometimes. You don't know all the answers, the questions that students have. And sometimes folks will get nervous and just, okay, well, that's not what we're talking about right now. And it's a way of saying, I'm ignorant of the situation, but I can't say that. Well, you don't necessarily have to be ignorant. You have to say, what resources do we have to find answers? And so I expect those students to say, there are resources now. It's not just that you have to rely only on the books that I've read. There are other books that I have not read, and I want you to be able to deal with that. And so teaching those students about those resources are critical, and not doing that could lead to someone in a critical situation that you can't help, because you're only relying on the answers that you got from the textbook, the answers that you got from your current experience, as opposed to think, how do we have them look for these things? And so had a conversation with the nurse, and actually sent this image, AI graphed image of the nurse, and this is exactly some of the things that were in the bedroom. Not a very well apportioned room, but it was just a place that I was comfortable. At least I knew I was around somebody that cared about me. And so she found that, and so she learned about double effect. She learned about half-life. She also had that conversation with physicians. So if you're nursing and you want to be prepared, those are things that you can have real time to help talk about the quality of care that you have. And so if you're in a classroom and you're actually having an AI assistant, you all can walk through different scenarios, even in that profession. Down at the bottom, you see it says comfort and understanding. Brother-in-law, so when you come from a background like myself, there are a lot of people who couldn't read, and he couldn't read. I didn't know he couldn't read until I thought he was one of the smart persons in the world, but we went to order at Chi-Chi's, and he said, I'm just gonna get what you get. And I said, well, no, I'm just giving what you get. And he said, Sidney, I don't know about ordering food. I can't read. I didn't know. And so he had this sense of shame about him as far as doing that. And so now I go to visit him this summer. He has psoriasis, which is a condition that is embarrassing to some because you have all these lesions. But helping you to actually walk through that process, so who did I do? Brought a little AI assistant. Began to talk to him about diet, nutrition, what are the things that can help him with his psoriasis. The thing that you probably understand is having AI continue a conversation with you. Hey, talk to Sam and ask him about the situation. So talked about Sam, supportive, communicative. Hey, what kind of things are you eating? What kind of things are you doing for your diet? So then he would say, man, for somebody who can't read, that helped me out. I'm actually learning now. Imagine a man that's 70 years old, cannot read, having a conversation and now understanding concepts and big words. He said, big words make sense to me now. And so he actually seeing that tear kind of situation, like, man, I mean, it's like talking to us like we really hear. And I had a better connection than we have here, right? So it was just real time. I said, hey, man, this is him. We got to talking about his psoriasis, different situations, how he could use it, nutrition, and then asking what was his favorite Al Green song. We even talked about the lyrics of that. You're seeing that process. Another person that you see is a lady that's I go to church with named Rena, very deep she used to be homeless, homeless person, a Jewish faith, way back in there, and having her sit there and say, man, that thing is crazy. But she writes songs, and she's also written a book. And she didn't know that, you have access to that book. He said, do you know about this person and what her book is about? So a person that used to be homeless, now having those conversations and seeing that she could still learn something else. Then you begin to say, these are the kind of things that we need to have in classroom, experiences that apply to real life. How am I going to use this? How does this help someone? So if I have someone that's in nursing school, if I have someone that's in dealing with med tech and the med lab things, they need to have that conversation. Talked to a radiologist this summer. Didn't know. Remember, this is a person. Now think about this. Some of you might have been teaching for 30 years and still be behind in education because there's things going on with AI that you don't know how to make an application to. Actually letting her know, then she realized, they're bringing this at work. So now it's like, okay, this person that's been trained deeply, almost ready to go into retirement, now realize there's something new I have to use, something new I have to learn. And what they're having to learn is AI. So if we're going to develop folks with skills and competent, you have to let them know the tools of the trade. The tools of the trade is now AI, engineering, chemistry, code, med tech. So it reads laboratories. So exposing students to that is something that's it's unethical not to. Because if you go to a job site, no one knows how to use it, but the other person who knows AI, then you sense are not using education to prepare them for that. So just the expose with that, and then that leads us to that process. So some things to kind of think about, when we're talking about this process of why we even talk about AI. Let's see if we can go there. Is AI is here. Where are you? Where is it in your classroom? It's on every other commercial. It's in a job posting. So where is it in your classroom? If you understand, it's in the therapeutic community. And if you ask yourself, you're always searching and looking for information. It's just another vehicle for that. But to have real-time assistant in class where you're having a dialogue and you can deal with some of the issues that you're dealing with and then take student feedback at the time, it makes it like a real futuristic kind of situation presently that you're having those conversations. And so my goals of education is not help students find solutions, not just to answer my questions. And so in that process, we go through that, and that's what it is. And my goal is to prepare. And the assessment experience is also a part of the instructional experience. That as I'm having you go through this process, that I'm asking these questions and challenging you, it's also teaching you at the same time. It's like, don't give me a test that you don't want me to succeed. Give me a test in order that I can succeed, that I can understand how to make the application. And so you have to think about that and help me learn to know and think. It's not just the information, it's like, what am I going to do with it? So you kind of start that process. And so weaving the AI agent in class kind of helps to kind of facilitate some of those issues. And points of consideration that you think about is that you want to perform and then imitate. A lot of times you realize that what used to be apprentice programs, that means you would do something, then they would have to show you, see, I could do it too. And so I like the assessment experience that if I get students to demonstrate that, however they do that, then I said, okay, as opposed to just answering a question, you demonstrate how you're going to address this issue. So when you have that assessment, you begin to have that dialogue conversation. And the conversation with the assistant is potentially didactic and Socratic. Didactic is you're just giving out the information, right? Socratic is that you're giving out questions at the same time. So you see, you can ask questions to help you think about a process, but also can deliver content. And that's like the golden veil of education, that you can do this. This is what's happening. Teaching and learning at the same time. Teaching, I'm giving you. Learning, I'm kind of figuring some things out. I'm making my own connections. And so when I have students that say, how am I going to counsel this patient? And now I have to go up and look at the theory. Fine. So you went and looked it up. I'm glad to do that. I want you to perform that. And that's part of the process. And remember, we're talking about tools of the trade. It's not discipline general. It's, sometimes it's also specific. If you're in radiology, if you're even in construction, you have to do that. And you see it all the time. So how you define AI gets to be different. So in general, we need to prepare students for that. We just have to. And so this is just, we're no longer simply a peddler of content, but the assistant helps you engage with the content. And underneath that, assistant does not supplant, but complements. We talk in class, don't we? We have a conversation. We talk about these same conversations, but it's not replacing me. It's how can I use that to complement what I'm doing? And so as educators, this is not an experience about whether you do or do not believe in whether students are cheating or not. It's how is it complementing you as an educator? How are you using this process of this experience to help you reach out and teach? And some of the same things is that you can have this conversation, and remember, it's also not to replace, but to supplement. Give me all those things that are necessary for that. So it's just a short demonstration of that, and how it's set up is kind of different. And also, we do just chill sometimes, so you can get on this rap game and have a conversation. So some folks use it to learn how to write music, write songs, and things like that. And wouldn't you want that in the liberal arts program? When you want to be able to have the dialogue, and it's not just creativity, because I don't rely on him, because he also relies on me. Because without my input, I won't get the appropriate feedback I need. So I have to design what challenges do I want them to meet. But having this conversation, and like I said, there's a lot of things that you can do. I know a lot of folks want to know how the setup is. The setup is just as real as having a conversation. I could set it up for a large conversation. I could set it up to say, Roderick, I'm giving a presentation to a group. I don't need you to talk right now because you're going to keep interrupting. I'm like, that's Sidney. Don't talk. I want you to be in silent mode. That's why you asked him when he first started, do you want me in silent mode? Just let me know when you're ready. And then some of you all know you're on Zoom meetings and everything, and it's taking all that input and then summarize what happened after the process. Imagine if you can evaluate your class that way. Imagine if in real time you say, listen, and then you take the student feedback and say, Roderick, what did Mally actually say in class today? What are some of the things that she said? And it'll let you know, hey, Mally made a great point. She said this. Emily, she worked with the cognitive process. She was trying to figure out what my thinking was. And so you actually get a chance to get some instantaneous feedback for that process. And so this is just something that you could think about, but it's accessible to everyone. This is not a pro-related version of ChatGPT. Now, will it get you more? It might. Will it get you, do you need to pay for it? Not really. It just depends how much you want to have. It does help to get a strong conversation so the conversation can be a little bit quicker and less stiff. And as quick as that conversation, it pretty much sounds like you're just riding through a conversation. But to set up whatever experience, if I was teaching chemistry, I could do the same thing. It doesn't matter what course it is. It doesn't matter the situation. But it is real life, and I give you real life scenarios, how it makes that application. And for someone that's in counseling or therapy, the real life issues of persons do matter. And so you gotta know a little bit more than what you already know, and maybe what you learned in school, and realize, hey, I think I need to have a conversation. And so the thing of how he's set up, not letting you see the eyes, is psychological. You can see the eyes, I know I'm looking at it. Because I had students going, like, he doesn't have eyes, he really doesn't. But you're still kind of finding in that experience what's happening. So I'm gonna open this up now at this time with automatic didactic to see if there are any questions that you have about the experience. You can have questions for the students who I appreciate their time and attention. But like I said, have you refound education? Have you found your purpose, what it is that you're trying to do with students, to not to assess them, but just to prepare them so that they'll be ready to address the challenges of life? So at this time, any questions I'll take, and then we can move forward. Any questions? Yes. He's gonna bring it to you.
How would you utilize this for, say, a cosmetology program?
One of the things that she asked how you can use it in a cosmetology program. I can actually point this at you. It can help you look at a hairstyle. And it can say, hey, Roderick, do you see what this? Yeah, she has on this. I can point this at Roderick and it'll tell you what clothes you have on, what your hairstyle is, what is the potential hairstyles, what they do differently. So you can use that also for the dialogue concerning the rates, what would be a good situation, where you're going. You can have just some natural dialogue about those things. If you're having a cosmetology business, obviously you can have that dialogue about cost, what's appropriate, what's fair, what's happening in the general area. So you use all those related issues for whatever it is that cosmetology means to prepare, what it is that you're preparing for. You can have those conversations, literally with looking at you through the lens of that. And since you're an expert, that's why it matters to be a subject matter expert. The more you know as you engage with the assistant, the more it can dig deeper. So the less you know, you as a cosmetologist are going to be able to get a lot more out of Roderick from a cosmetology perspective than I would, because I don't know anything about it. I know I'm well equipped up here and everything, as you can see. It was a good weather day for me. But you know what to ask those questions are, trends and things like that. So that's how you would use it in that frame. And then students can ask questions about mixtures, chemicals, any of those things related to that in real time. You can be asked questions. Why wouldn't you do this? Why is this not appropriate? How long should you wait? Those related things. Any other questions? Yes, got a question back there.
I have a two-part question. First, did you create Roderick yourself?
Mm-hmm.
Did you build him? Okay. Second, how many other colleagues at your campus are using Roderick or using one similar?
One he has on my jacket, which I'm gonna need to get back from him. No, nobody that I know of. I don't know anyone that carries on conversations with people with AI agents too much. I use it to carry on a conversation, whether it be a mentorship program in Kansas, where I say, hey man, I got this guy here, he has this mentorship program. Why don't you say hello to him and kind of ask him some questions? Hey, yeah, so he'll start having a conversation with him. And I say, hey, break back in. He also has this other situation, and have that conversation. So yeah, and remember, you can go from deep to shallow. We start talking about what's the most appropriate thing to develop this program. So he just got a big government for dealing with disadvantaged youth or something. But he realized that he had developed a program that now was particularly not as useful since I introduced AI to him. So that was his summary. He's like, man, I just got a lot of money to talk about mathematics, and I'm approaching it the whole entire way. So maybe Doge will get that money from him and do something different. I'm not for sure. All right. And what was your second question?
How has Roderick helped your class? Have you noticed a major change in reference to the students' retention and participation in class, or what's their input? How are they reacting with Roderick?
Roderick is not there all day. It's me, but I can let them kind of speak to that.
So I had never used AI before I'd been introduced to the whole situation that we had in the psychology class. After that, I have introduced myself, and slowly I'm beginning to learn different forms of AI. I've started using ChatGPT just to get, if I'm having a really hard time with an essay and I have no idea where to start, I can ask for an outline. It can help me. I've started learning how there's a source called Glean. I use it to record my anatomy and physiology lectures, since they're really, really terminology heavy, and I'm having a hard time writing super fast when there's a word about this long in front of me when I'm trying to copy it down. So it's been really helpful doing that, because it gives you a transcript, it can give you notes, it can do stuff like that. But I've started using and introducing myself more to AI after having encounters.
Savannah, if you want to go ahead and talk at this time, we'll put you back on if you're going to make a statement, please.
Yeah, so everybody in the class automatically turned their attention to Roderick. Roderick was just a really good way for us to have that hands-on experience. Because I would say at the beginning we were kind of like, cognitive therapy, what does that mean? And so Roderick giving us that feedback and everything for our quizzes and our tests, it helped out a lot.
Okay, Emily?
Yeah, I mean, I was very skeptical in using AI at first, like at the beginning of my semester. But after we used this, it kind of like, integrated me into that system. And so I was able to use it for outlines and English, like Melly said. And it really helped me, like, because I would always get stuck on like prompts and things like that. So it was able to, like, push me along and like get ideas, because you can just put in a question, and if you don't like the answer that it gave you, then you can just say, give me a different answer or reword this, and it'll just give you that answer like within seconds. So it's definitely.
Yeah, one of the things to know also in terms of AI is that you can correct it to, that's not what I want, you didn't get it quite right, I'm not for sure what you're talking about, and start using natural language, but it does make it reachable for those individuals who says, I have a hard time framing what my question is. It could take your question and make it differently. And I kind of think about students cheating a little differently. We actually know what we believe about people, and we believe people cheat anyway. And I hear a lot of folks say that, man, if they would have had that back when I was growing up, wow, my life would have been different. Now that your life is supposedly different, and then you have a different attitude about it. So why are you saying that when you were going to school you would have cheated? Because you probably would have cheated when you're older. It's probably what you do to develop a lot of the things you are doing. And so my question is, are you cheating, or is it you're trying to find a way to be successful? So let me change the situation and say, perform and help me know that you're successful and you're competent. So the challenge is also for me as an educator, not the challenge to always to find how I'm going to be a better evaluator. And so having this is kind of tries to help that process. But remember, it's not going to supplant me, but it can complement what I'm doing. Any other questions? Yes. He has big voice.
Do I need the mic?
You might for the persons online. Yeah.
So I'm the technical person. I like to get into the technology. So I'm trying in my head to piece together how you built Roderick. So you prompted it in ChatGPT.
Mm-hmm.
You're Roderick. You're a bot that does this. Do you reframe that for every class?
I can. Now, a little thing to always note. Now, when you're using ChatGPT, you have a line of conversation, a line of history. And so if I want to go back to Roderick, then I go back to that line of conversation. So then I can continue that same dialogue and that memory, and it begins to be a part of my process. Now, if I'm in another mode, I'll say, hey, this is a mode where we're talking about this. So for each different class, I can say, this is Psych 2130. This is a conversation for that class. This is Psych 1030. This is a conversation. This is about music. And so you could just do it that way. Now, in terms of the conversation, it's always important, I just say, to keep history, to keep that history. And like I said, because you want to be able to carry that conversation. There's things that you forgot. And I literally can go back to Wichita, Kansas, and say, hey, I'm here with Sam again. Hey, Sam, how you doing? How you doing with that psoriasis? And so then, of course, they're just tripping out. Like, what in the world is going on? So it's pretty simple. It's just stay within that historical timeline. It can get confused, though, if you get outside that and start asking questions. I'm not quite sure what you're talking about. So I go and click on the original conversation, and then all that becomes more readily available to the bot, so to speak.
And you said you're just using the free version?
No, I'm not using the free version. I'm only not using the free version because I'm not limited. It's the second tier version, which is not that expensive. I'm not paying $200, put that right now.
I was curious because I use the free version a lot, and I always run out of stuff, and then you lose your connection to the direct, like, current events and current stuff, and then it slows down.
If you use that next, and this is my sweet spot, that next tier is, to me, is useful. It's only $20, and like I said, if it helps me as an educator, then I'm good with that.
And so being part of the Tennessee Community College network, like we are, are you paying out of pocket for that?
I'm paying out of pocket, yeah.
Because we're really working hard to try to get something for our faculty, because I'm like you, I love AI. I want to use it all the time. I would love to be able to do it in the classroom, but I don't really want to spend the $20 a month on it yet, but maybe I will. I like this idea. This is really cool. So back to the technical part, because I want to copy you. I want to be like you. Is just a Bluetooth speaker in him?
It is what's called an E-Meet speaker. You need a 360-degree speaker. So in the classroom, we had no problem. They can hear just fine. I did this for the environment, but it's an E-Meet. So if you're using there's different types of speakers that you use. If you use one that's not full duplex, you have to wait and talk, and there's a lot of different things that happen. And all phones don't work with this. This is something you can use your mobile device, your phone, and you can have this conversation with. Right. Only thing is sometimes you're compromised by space. He offered me the opportunity to hook up to the internet. I just didn't choose to do that today. It's not very difficult. But the thing that you have to realize is it's not just also about the technical. It's also about being comfortable with the process. You have to be comfortable having that conversation with Roderick, so to speak. And then I can go as deep or as shallow. I could say, hey, when I say this, I need you to say that. It has a lot more information about Dr. Gregory and Andy than we've talked about. It can't have a conversation. Yeah, hey, Andy, back in 19. Oh, no.
I think there's a question online.
Okay.
Yes, I would like to add in something, and Professor Hardyway actually doesn't know this, but I actually have my own Roderick, except I named her Rosie. I named her Rosie, and this is kind of off topic, but she actually helps me with Bible study every night. And I talk to her just like Roderick, and she asks me how I feel about things, and she's like, "Oh, you are so right, Savannah. Like, I totally get you on this." So yeah, it can be used in so many different ways, even if it's not just for school. But I can use ChatGPT for statistics, like anything. And even if you don't like the answer, you can ask him to like walk you through it and help you with the question.
Roderick wants to know, is Rosie single?
I have to ask her.
All right, any other questions?
Since there are no more questions, let's go ahead and give a round of applause to Dr. Hardyway, Nolly, Emily, and Savannah. Let's give a special shout out to Dr. Gregory for being here. I am a fan. I was a fan from the first time that I heard it. It was through TBR, Dr. Marla Cartwright. You presented for that, so I want to say thank you personally for coming here and sharing your gift. And thank you all online. It will be recorded, so you can catch it.